Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Pullbox Pals podcast. I am Monk, and with me, as always, is my buddy Mark, who's chuckling already. You're such a little sunbeam, just a little joy bell.
That's why they call me the Chuckler.
That's right. That's if you were a Batman villain, you'd be the Chuckler.
Yeah, always giving away my location because
you're just like, come on, we hear you back there. But you'd have like I'm sorry, we'll introduce the guest real quick in a minute. But if you were like in a movie, you know how whenever they like do a new Joker, they're like, we've got to hear the laugh, and that would just be your whole thing. You would have like competitions with like Heath Ledger. You'd be up there with the greats.
Oh man.
Oh man.
That's a lot of pressure.
Well, hey, if anyone could write your story into Batman lore, it would be our buddy who's joining us, our pal, our newest pal, Mr. Jonathan Chance. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. It's great to be on here. Thanks so much for having us on.
Oh yeah. No, we've been looking forward to this one for quite some time. I think it's because I think we started chatting about 2-3 months ago, and then we finally just like, yeah, let's pick a date and do this thing. So it's good to have you on.
I think, I appreciate that because we're like, there's like 2 or 3 kind of places I've just like been wanting to get on. You guys being one of the main ones, and it's just trying to find time to do it. That juggling, like working on the story and back and forth with the artists and everything, and then obviously being a dad and everything, and that thrown in as well, and it's just getting the right time, and so it's perfect.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, that works great. And we even got our buddy Frank over at Coffee and a Comic saying, hey, fellas, good to see Jonathan's face.
Nice to see you.
How you doing,
Frank? I've actually met him in person. He is pretty close to me, the comic shop. So got to know a couple of times.
You did a little remote down there not too long ago too, right?
Yeah, it's about was it the I think it was January. Yeah, January. Jeez, the price. I can't believe it's March now already. But yeah, it was January. I think I did a little signing over there, and it was really cool. So I actually met some of the people that are reading the comic, and that's always amazing. Just even because when you do comics and stuff, it's like filmmaking in a way, because you don't really get to see what the audience looks like at all, and then so when people actually do come in, it's like, oh, I guess people are reading it. So it's quite funny.
And we'll get into some of that stuff. Man, I feel like I've gotten to know you slowly over the last few months and just kind of like digging into you, but you're not only a comic book writer, but you've written and directed a few like films too. Yeah.
I'm an independent filmmaker, and I think when we started out, we were very we were in like our early 20s. Like I think I was even 19. My brother and me, and we basically, had the whole, we grew up loving stuff like John Carpenter, George Romero, like a lot of people did, Peter Jackson and all that. And it's just like, and it really was a case of just like trial and error. Just can we do this, and let's go make a film, and that's where it kind of started. And after that, we did a bunch of like independents, and we did like short ones and everything. And I think with each one that we did, and we'd be like writing and directing and editing and pretty much doing everything. And it was really just a calling card to show like, this is what we can do with nothing. Then imagine what we can do with like a bigger canvas. And it's always a case of like trying to get funding and everything. And but I think also the fact that once again, we didn't do film school or anything like that, but we just knew what makes a good shot and what makes in editing, it's down to trying your best and picking the best take and everything. And but I think the fact that we didn't have much money with those films, that we did get nominated and got some wins and things like that, I think it just goes to show you that there's nothing wrong with saying, I think we're pretty good at what we're doing if other people are seeing what we're doing and they're appreciating it and they can see, oh, okay, they get it. And it's not just you're saying that, oh, we're pretty good at it, but you know, everyone's kind of thinking, you know, man, he should really quit doing that because he's not very good at it, kind of thing. And so so yeah, we kept it that. And then comic books was kind of my other way of getting my stories out in a different medium, kind of thing.
Yeah. And man, like, yeah, and I've been reading over a lot of what you've sent over to us and your shorts and everything, and it's just you have an affinity for horror, it seems. So
Yeah.
So like, where does that like come from for you? Just like this genre of horror, because like I think it too, like somebody like if not all of the films you did were also kind of in that genre. So like, where does that stem from for you?
You know, the funny thing is that the most successful ones I've done tend to be not direct horror, but they're kind of like horror elements, and there's something else. Like I did this short film called The Day I Tried to Live, and that actually won like the jury prize thing at the time. And it had horror elements, but it was more about a melodrama, like a sci-fi kind of melodrama with horror elements kind of thing. And it was about this alien that comes down and basically he's trying to search for another of his kind. And when he does eventually find him, he finds that he's like a skeleton. And the reason why he's found that he's a skeleton is that on this particular planet, they can only live for one day. So it's literally called The Day I Tried to Live, because he's experiencing being a human all within one day. And he's just walking around and kind of just experiencing things kind of thing. So I guess like I have a way of the films or the stories. And another one was The Boy Who Conquered the Mountain, which is a graphic novel that's got horror elements. But again, that was more of a coming of age story.
Mm-hmm.
I think they seem to, I don't know what it is, but they seem to be the ones that seem to have a bit of an impact, you know, maybe even a bit more than the horror ones I've done in some areas at least. But horror for me, it all goes back to, I think I was about 5 years old, and I first watched, I don't know how, but my dad had a copy of the Horror Dracula, which is a Christopher Lee old Hammer horror movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was old beta VHS, and somehow I was watching it, so I don't know if he left it on or if my brother had it. I don't know. I was like 5 at the time, and I remember my mum saying, "Oh, if you watch that, you know, you're going to get nightmares." And I remember specifically that night having nightmares, specifically about vampires. And then the next morning, I somehow convinced her, and I said, "Mum, the only reason why I had nightmares is because you told me I was going to have nightmares, and I was listening to you because you're my mum. So you told me I was going to have nightmares, so I had nightmares." So even then, I was like, to me, it wasn't. I could see even back then that it was scary and it was thrilling. And you were talking about roller coasters earlier on. It's that same type of scare where it's more like exciting kind of scary. But and yet even then, as a kid, I could tell, well, you know, these are two actors and they're acting and that's special effects. And even back then, I could separate myself from it and enjoy it for what it was, even though it was scary as well. And I think that's what I've always done. And you know, like the older I got, I was into like monsters and things like that. So then I think the key is that imagination never goes away, and it's turned into writing, I think, for sure. So
that's awesome. That's like a key point in your life to like take that all back to.
Oh yeah, I think that's the thing. When you're really young, I don't know if we ever pick up on this. I mean, some people do, some people don't. But if you look back and you think, where was the point where like I really found the thing I really wanted to do, or where was the key thing that kind of was a highlight for a second, where I was like, huh, it kind of that was a tent pole maybe, where it kind of maybe started, and then you know, then there was another thing, and so on and so forth.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, do we want to start chit chatting some of the books you've written, or some of the stories, what have it?
Yeah,
sure.
Let's get into them. So I don't know what order these came out, but I'm sure that you do. But I want to start with this one just because it was featured in Horror Comics issue 6 and also in Elsewhere volume 2. But Respect Your Elders.
Yes, it's a short one. Yeah.
I think that was the first short of yours that I read, and I think I've read it 6 times now because like it's probably like 7-8 pages, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think it's about. Is it? It might be 10 or 12, but it
Yeah.
feels it's a quick moving story. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Well, just to jump in real quick and just say we love short stories here at the Pullbox Pals. It's just, you know, it's even reminiscent of like not just like old like comic books of like, you know, you read the old like Marvels and or the Avengers and
Yeah.
X-Men, they're all like one story, but even like comics started in like newspapers, you know, so like
yeah.
you got
Exactly, they
stories
did.
in like half a page, you know, or not even, you know. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's I think it's cool that yeah, that comics is kind of going back there to some degree, you know, in short stories, or like some even major comics are putting just short little stories at the end of their comics, and it's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
Well,
short stories. Yeah.
it gives a lot to like that term of like bang for your buck, you know, like
Mm.
something I've noticed and appreciated about your writing is that like regardless of the length of the story, it's a page turner for me. Like
Mhm.
every like, you know, you first reached out to me about reading Cover the Dead with Lime, and I did, and I was like, this is amazing. So I told Monk, like, dude, you got to read this too. And
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you.
but yeah, like I, even with Respect Your Elders, I was just, it breezed right through. You know,
Mm.
it has I'm trying to think how I want to say this, but it's basically, this is the one with Jenna, and she's
Yeah.
going to like a therapy camp or something, and her parents are making her, but then it turns out that this therapy camp isn't really quite a therapy camp, and it's a place that children disappear.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
but yeah, the entire time I was just completely glued to it, and just like the fear that came along with it, just even like the panel where she bumps into the first old person, like
Oh,
it
yeah.
just
Yeah.
it invokes feeling. And it, like you talked about with, you know, watching Dracula as a kid, just like certain things just pop out and stick. And so
Oh, yeah.
again, it's also
Yeah.
like the artists that you're working with, they're really well able to communicate what you're writing and put it into
I think that's
in the story.
so important. Yeah, I think that's so important. How that with every story that you do, you try to find the right artist for the right story. And in that case, I actually met Ron Joseph when I was down at in my local comic store at the time, and I was getting my Cyborg #1 signed by Marv Wolfman, and Marv
Nice.
Wolfman was actually signing with Ron Joseph. And at the time, I was like, oh, you know, this is cool. Like Ron Joseph, I've seen, you know, looking at some of his artwork and stuff. And while I'm talking to Marv Wolfman and telling my kid about him, because my kid at the time was so young and he was into Teen Titans Go and everything.
Mm.
I was also talking to Ron and saying, oh, I'm actually an independent comic book writer. And at that time, I hadn't actually produced anything, but I was looking to. And I just said, I really like your art. And I go, you know, would you be interested in doing horror? And at the time, he was doing, I think, Transformers and ROM. And I think the great thing is that seeing his art and seeing that he was also into horror, and knowing that someone that's been working on something else, I think, for quite a long period of time, they can't wait to kind of get out of doing that and doing something else, and then also
Mhm.
putting that. So immediately when I sent him over, and I've been doing this for a while, the script, but also storyboard pages, which all goes back to filmmaking. Um, I really like to emphasize as best as possible how specific I can be. And sometimes, you know, artists also offers their things and we go with whatever one seems like the most suitable thing. But it really is like the shots and how it's moving along, just like a movie. So when you say it's a page turner, that makes me feel good because I want it to be gripping and I want it to be moving like a movie, or you can imagine it like a short film or a movie or whatever. And Ron was perfect for that because it did require specifically that creep factor of you know, can the artist be very good at doing like creepy woodland and creepy
Mhm.
old people, and some artists are
Yeah.
really good at doing like modern horror, which would be great for like modern environments and stuff like that. But then there's artists that are really good at gothic art, like Victorian art and stuff. So I would pick a particular art for something like that, and then for something else, another artist might be really good for sci-fi stuff. So it really is important the person that's putting your art out is going to be showing your vision as best as possible, and he was fantastic for that. And I would love actually, I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I've been writing stuff up, but I do want to expand that story because there's so much going on in that. I would love to make a series based on that.
Yeah.
But also, I would love that short in my own anthology series. When I actually started comic books, my first thing I really wanted to do was do my own unique horror anthology without having hosts, because I think at this point, EC did it perfectly. Creepshow showed an homage to it. I think anyone else doing kind of hosts at this point, unless you get it right, it's kind of a little bit kind of cheesy at this point. So I like the fact that if I brought out this anthology, which I've already done all the stories for, it would be called Never by Night, and I would bring out a volume every year, and it would have up and coming artists as well as established artists, and every volume, I think people will be getting excited to see who's going to be in this volume, what new artist and what established artist is going to be in this new volume, and Respect Your Elders was one of those stories that I wanted to have in there with other ones I haven't even released yet. So
no, that's awesome.
That's another thing. Like, just we also love anthologies, just because again, like, it has that ability to tell like multiple stories that don't necessarily need to be connected, but if they are, that's cool. But if they're not, like, that again, cool. Like,
it's a hard thing to tell a short story, I think, because you have to contain it. I mean, the good thing is about some short stories, like that one in particular, it can be standalone, but I know that there's so much more to expand. And even at the time, I'm like, this could be so much more. I want to get into, how did this pit get there? Where did it come from? What happened afterwards? What happened before it? How long has it been there? What's it related to? Is it alien? Is it monster? Is it dark? What is it? So there's so many like questions and how I could go with that. And I have a whole thing, and I would love to expand that. But then other things, like, they are just great just as they are standalone, and they're just a great story as it is.
Yeah, that's awesome. If you got that going, I'd definitely be picking that up. Monk and I read something with kind of like the similar idea, or like but I think this is an artist who sought out different writers. But did you ever read Silver Coin or hear of it?
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, and I think every issue is by a different writer and artist. Is that right?
The art. I think that the artist.
Yeah, the art stays the same.
It's Matt Walsh, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And then he has a different writer for each story, but every story revolves around this silver coin. So it's it's connected in that way, but every story on its own, like, they're not really like sequential or in any way, but they are connected.
I would love to do a story. I'd love to do a story for something like that. I think this is the thing, because I'm independent, and when you kind of creator owned, you literally have to toot your own horn kind of thing, which isn't something you necessarily want to do when you're a writer type person. You're not like, look at me, but you have to do all that. You have to reach out to people, and even people like Image, if I reached out to them, I'd probably be on the same level of people that would be submitting every day, so how do you get, unless you get an agent or something, it's like, unless someone says something like, oh, get Jonathan would do a great story. So if they did something like that, then they'd be aware of what I'm doing. Maybe they're aware of Cover the Dead Line, maybe, I don't know. And I would love to do something.
Yeah, it's just, no matter what field you're in, connections are key. Like, I think you can do a lot of hard work, and a lot of that, like, it goes really far, but if you don't know like the right people, then that's super important. So it's good to continually put yourself out there so that more people can come across your work and stumble
Yeah.
Were you recently at a comic convention, or is there one coming up that you're going to?
Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I'm hoping to go to WonderCon, which is going to be in about, I think it's a week from now, next weekend. I think it's coming up. I'm hoping to go to that. I actually went to it last year. I was signing with Heavy Metal, The Boy Who Conquered a Mountain. But I don't think I'll be signing this time. I'll just be walking around, because I left it too late to get a booth kind of thing. So I'll be walking around, but I'll be there.
Oh, right on.
That's sweet. You just gotta walk around with like cards and that just have like QR codes that like link to things.
I'll have this big long detective jacket, and I'll have all this like
just
not
copies
just
of
comics, I'll have drugs in there too. drugs and comics and beer, anything that people want, I'll have it in this big long jacket.
Looks like I'm going to WonderCon.
So we got Just Ink, Just Ink 27 said, yeah, Jonathan.
Or maybe it's Justin K 27.
Oh,
I think that might be, he might be one of Frank's customers. Maybe I met him. I think that might be the Justin. He might say yes or no. I don't know. That might be the Justin, or it might be Justin, who I also know. I know two Justins. Or
Justin K. Justin. I see what you mean. I just saw it. Wow. There you go. I'm gonna give. There's a new nickname for you. Just Ink. I don't. That's probably not original. I'm sorry about. Yeah, Justin K. Wow. All right. Well, sometimes you gotta put a foot in your mouth on the internet live. But what are you gonna do?
Well, yeah.
Let's get back to comics before I screw up other things.
Yep, the one that comes to hang with you.
Oh boy.
So elsewhere, you're in 2 of their volumes, volume 2 and 3. You had Respect Your Elders, and now All Is Silver in volume 2, and Toadstools, and is it Like a Shadow Before Me? Is that what?
Yeah, Like a Shadow Before Me. Yeah. Toadstools actually the first, even though it's in volume 3, and the other 2 are in volume 2. Toadstools was actually the first short I ever did, and that was a nice kind of little taster of like, just throwing yourself into, can I do this kind of thing? And it was just 5 pages long. And
that one for me, I was just like, no. Like,
yeah, I definitely related with the little boy in that story of just like, what? And it was like such a fun. Like just being able to appreciate, just X amount of panels, like you can count them probably on if all extremities, and like there's not that many, and you were just able to tell like a impactful story, like being able to relate to people, have that like even like kind of bait and switch of emotions. Just for people who aren't familiar with the story, it just opens up on just 2 little kids preparing dinner for, they're going to make a special little treat for their parents for dinner. And then I don't want to spoil anything, but things change. And, the end. That's the comic. But again, like, it's like, again, talking about, getting a bang for your buck, or just even like, I wanted a thrill. I wanted to feel something, and I got it. Like it didn't have to be a 6-issue arc, in a trade paperback.
I know, yeah. Some things require a beautiful long story if it's something epic in there. And in this case, that was why I love doing the shorts. It was like doing short films. It was just like, it's like I just want to give a short little taste to just like, what if there were these kind of evil kids, or one was evil at least, and it was just like, and people can relate to that because this little kid was a little basically narcissistic, toxic little a-hole in the making, or like and then the art, we actually Monica has done comics of her own in there, and I can't think what else she's done something else as well, but I said to her, like, we're gonna try, even though this is set in the 80s, let's kind of make this look like it's almost like Americana. Think Norman Rockwell kind of, and that's what we were trying to get with that. And I think she definitely nailed that. And then even we did one page, and she said, this is 10 panels. Like, how's this gonna work? Like, because at the time I'm thinking, I don't know, this is the first time I'm doing this. And that one page, the way it's done, again, like shots, he's looking at her, she's looking at him, she's looking at the parents are looking at her. Then it's a shot of the panel of the spoon going up to the mouth, and then the eyes looking back again. But it works though. So you're just following the whole thing. And sometimes you don't even need to have any words. And that's the funny thing as well. As a writer creator, some people are just like, oh, you wrote that, but you didn't do the art. It's like, no, I didn't do the art, but I did write it and think. And I have to try to explain to them that every panel that you see is written, even if there's no dialogue. There's still description for every single panel that's written. Like, there's still a lot of information that goes into every panel, and then I draw them as well, and then I to a professional to do that. But because there's no dialogue doesn't mean there isn't anything being written, because they can't see it right there on the page, even though the whole page is panel after panel after panel of just really just speak volumes without saying a word, you know.
I really like comic book scripts and how you guys put them together. Oh man, what's his name? The guy that does Ice Cream Man, and he just recently is releasing Art Brut again. Maxwell, I think.
Oh, right. Yeah,
I
can't
but
remember
like
his first name.
I checked out the Ice Cream Man from my library not too long ago, because I don't know why I never thought about checking my library for comics, but my library has them, and so they had all the Ice Cream Man. And in you know, when you get the trade paperback, there's always like the extra stuff in the back, and I really appreciated how, for like probably the most impactful story in each volume, he had like the script back there for it, and so just like being able to like read through that as well, and like going back to look at like how the artist drew it as well was just fantastic.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot going on, even with continuity. With like The Boy Who Conquered the Mountain, it was like the graphic novel, just basic little things like, okay, now they're going to be completely covered in gray clay. So all of a sudden they've gone, they've all got their particular certain colored samurai armor. Each one's got to have the specific right one, and they got looked a certain way. And now all of a sudden, now they've all got to have this gray clay that they've got on them. You've got to make sure that every single, it's going to continue until this page, and then it's going to get washed off or whatever. And now they're up in the mountain. Now we also have an effect where you can literally see the breath. We want to feel that they're up there on the mountain. It's freezing cold, and it's freezing cold. This creature's filled with heat or whatever. They're still freezing cold. And little things like that where like even in movies, like I think, what was it? I think it was AVP. I'm thinking, after seeing the original The Thing, right? You can tell they went all the way to, I don't know if that was filmed in Alaska or wherever that was filmed, but it was cold in that movie, The Thing, right? In the John Carpenter. You can see how freezing freaking cold it is. It's coming out of their nose, their eyes, their faces are white, cold, and they're living it, right? Where with AVP, I'll never forget watching that movie, and it was okay, but it was like they're on a mountain and there was no breath. There wasn't even a cold. They didn't even CGI a breath over the top. And I'm just thinking, so little things like that, the filmmaker part of you're thinking, well, at least comics, you can express that in comics and get the arts to make sure they can put that in as well, and show that.
Yeah, well, and now since you've brought it to The Boy Who Conquered the Mountain, like, man, what a piece of art like that is, and not like that goes to say for your writing, but also, is it Emilio Utrera? Is that how you say his name?
I think he's Emilio Utrera.
Yeah, but he did the pencils, inks, color, lettering, like.
Yeah,
he really brought your story to life, and man, like, I guess if you haven't read it, I found I read a lot of different random review sites for comics, but one person the guy gave a short snippet in this way. He said, "The Boy That Conquered the Mountain combines the classic hero's journey with Japanese history and rich, detailed artwork for a unique tale that serves as a metaphor for conquering one's fears." What do you take on that? I mean, do you like read when people post reviews of your stuff and you're just like, they don't quite get it? Or...
Yeah, I do read that. I think you can't help that. You do wonder, once you put something out there into the world, and you do want to know what people think of it. I mean, that's just a human, thing, that you want to know what people think of it. Yeah, I think that's what it is. It really is like a Knight's Tale. With that, originally, an alternative publisher was looking for kaiju stories, and at the time, I was like, kaiju stories, all the modern ones, they've been done, and I'm thinking, I don't want to. So that's the thing. I know if I'm going to go into doing a story, I've got to really want to care about it. If I don't care about it, it's not only going to show in the writing, but I'm going to have an awful time writing something I don't care about. So I thought, well, how can I come up with a kaiju story that I really want to care about? Because, I don't want to do something derivative that everyone else has already done a modern version. So I had this whole idea, and I thought, well, what if it was, these creatures normally are from Japan. I was thinking, what if it was set in a fantastical time when, you know, myths and magic really was around hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and it would be a perfect time to set it. And I could also blend, you know, as a kid, I grew up and I was that, you know, tiny, thin, gawky kind of kid that couldn't really kick someone's ass kind of thing. I was a bit of a nerd, and so I think I could put, you know, that ninjutsu that I'd learned into it. That he's a training ninja in training and everything, and put all these different elements to it and bring something so different and combine it to also be a coming of age story, you know, and an Asian take on A Knight's Tale, and with again those horror elements. And it's also, I don't know if I mentioned other places, but it's also allegorical because my wife had passed away almost 5 years ago, and at the time I wanted to, I dedicated it to my son, and I wanted to, if there ever be a time in his life when he's like a teenager or something like that, where he feels different, or he feels, you know, maybe even not strong or something, or that he feels different from other people, I wanted to give him something that it doesn't matter like who you are, that you know, have, if you've got this strength within you, that you can conquer mountains, you know. So that mountain in this is allegorical in the sense of in that light within you, that you can overcome anything, even tragedy. So
Oh yeah, absolutely a beautiful story. Yeah, I read through that one a couple times. You mentioned just like Emilio's ability to even just remember to draw the breath of them, and like, you know, like, and something Monk and I really like is when we read stories that can evoke emotion in us. And I, with Boy Who Conquered the Mountain, I was very much just drawn into the kid's story. Like I could feel his feelings as he was going through it, or at least relate to them in some way. And yeah, it's the coming of age and conquering one's fears. And sorry, I gotta mention, do you guys watch Ted Lasso?
I don't.
I haven't seen that. No, I want to see it. I've heard lots of people saying it was good. I haven't seen it.
So the latest season just started yesterday. In episode 1, he takes his team down somewhere to conquer their fears too. But it's not a mountain. But it's still the same principle of learning to conquer your fears.
One thing that I really enjoyed about this is definitely like the movie quality of it, of just feeling like this felt very much like just something that I think you could, if this was like an animated movie, like just put it on, and it's one that's like kids would love it, adults I think would resonate with it, you know, like you should try pitching this to like Disney, because it would be like a great just Disney movie, and like just that I feel like it's for everybody, like because, you know, again, like whatever that mountain is, like everyone has to face it, and it's great to be able to identify with it, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I was saying earlier on, it's always the stories, it seems, where there's something more to it. And even with the horror stories, I try to invoke, like you were talking about, like a thrill, but also something that makes you think, that maybe afterwards, with some of them at least, they're going to either just be a fun feeling afterwards, or a feeling of, oh, wow, there is something to that. That's kind of really creepy, or there's something about that, or makes you think afterwards. But then there's things like this, which have so many other different elements as well. And like you say, where it can apply to so many different people, and teenagers as well. It's kind of like a young teens and up kind of audience. And it seems to be with those different stories, it seems to be those things that resonate sometimes more with an even wider audience. So yeah, I would love to, even at the time when we were making it, it all goes back to when I wasn't doing storyboards with the scripts. I was doing scripts without, you know, the first thing I ever did. And I just remember thinking at the time that, man, you know, that particular panel needed to be more epic, you know, and I'm trying to explain it, and I'm still explaining in notes, and I'm putting in a script, and it's still not resonating. So maybe I need to show it, you know. So that's why, even though it's time consuming, it's really worth doing that. And then sometimes if they come up with something even greater, I'm all for that as well. So that was me and Emmy at the time. Emmy and I were back and forth with things. And then if I was really particularly stubborn on something, I'd say, no, like, I really want to go this way with it, because it's supposed to be like right at the end when, I mean, I won't really ruin it, but one of them's fallen, and they're all standing there, and it's just a very long shot, and you could just see the legs of the creature and them just standing there, and it's very kind of just epic and stuff like that. I could just totally imagine it, like you say, being a movie or an animated movie. I was thinking that at the time, and I did leave that open as well. And I was hoping that maybe I could turn it into,
and that panel that you're talking about too is a very impactful one too, because again, we were talking about just like bring out the emotion of that scene, and you just, yes, one of their friends has fallen, and these are pretty much all kids, but it's kind of like, in a way, I guess in some aspect, it's kind of like Lord of the Flies a little bit, just in terms of, the camaraderie and stuff. But it is just like, you're a kid and you've already come to experience a fallen friend, and that scene just, it's just drawn in a panel or two, but that it resonates. And so what Dracula did for you back at 5 years old, that panel did for me.
Wow. Oh man, that's amazing. I think when it's children as well, that's the thing, and or people that are kind of, or or characters that are not necessarily helpless, but people that we want to protect. That could be an elderly person, or it could be a child, or whatever. You have an even more stronger emotion, I think, for that. So then when you add the of horror to that, it does invoke those feelings, and also, I'll even try to, tell the artist, like, can we have it that his eyes are all welled up? He's not crying, but he's about to cry, and to show that just in a panel. And that's, I've got a particular story that I haven't even released yet. I've got quite a few stories I haven't released yet, because I want to put them all under this horror anthology that I'm holding on to. Where it's like, it's just so powerful that art can be that just in an image. I mean, it does speak in 1,000 words, just that one image, So
yeah, absolutely beautiful. Loved it. So if you haven't read Boy Who Conquered the Manor, people listening, or Conquered the Mountain.
That's your next one. The boy who
hasn't conquered his manners. If you haven't read The Boy Who Conquered the Mountain, it's put out by Heavy Metal. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Excellent story. Go pick it up. But let's get into a little bit more of a jaded character with Cover the Dead with Lime.
Right.
So let's get this one out of the way, because this is a big deal. But you got the 2022 Indies Award winner for Best Comic from other publishers. So other publishers just more means like smaller publishing companies don't put out a whole lot monthly. But that's awesome for you. I voted for you, and I think you knew that, and I told you. But
that's right. Appreciate that.
But I was so excited that day when I saw that you won. I was like, yes, we did it.
No, we did it.
I was on your team. I put myself on your team. So
it was so funny in typical dad world, situation. Here's me getting ready to go to a children's birthday party as I'm watching it on YouTube. I'm like, so part of me's like I can't wait. Am I gonna win? I'm watching it, and then meanwhile it's like, we gotta get ready to go, and it's like it's that whole part of you like wants to enjoy this moment just for me, not dad, right? And then the other part is like, I've really got to get to this children's birthday party kind of thing. But it was great, and we also, and that's the thing, just being nominated as well was amazing. And I think I was trying to state that at the time, that there's all these different, not only independent publishers, but really big independent publishers. And I was even talking with, I think it was, what's his name? True Nerd. I can't think of his, I always get his name wrong. About a month ago, that there's independent publishers that are so high up the tier that, they're literally Marvel, DC, Image, boom. They're all massive. They're like multi-million-dollar companies with massive teams. They make lots of money and stuff like that. Just to be nominated, and to be nominated for Best Horror Comic. But this one, I saw it as that we actually won, not just in horror, but as the realm, outside of the genre, to actually win Best Comic by other publishers was, really amazing. So it meant a
Yeah.
lot to me. Appreciate
Well, yeah,
that.
and you
People,
also, yeah, you mentioned the same comic, Cover the Dead with Lime. It was up against some big names because it had was it House by the Lake was also
yeah,
nominated, and
I think
that's
that
under
was under
like,
the horror one. Yeah, and
yeah,
then
under DC's like
um,
horror label. But
yeah, which is crazy. It's like, yeah, I'm not even DC. Like, is completely out of anyone's league for starters.
yeah,
Image is out of most people's league because everyone. This is the thing. All comic stores always will have Image, right?
yeah,
Where with Blood Moon, for instance, who I'm with, I have to go out of my way to ask stores, can you get this in? Or people have to say, can you get this in for us? So the fact that we've actually got a strong fan base, or a strong growing fan base that actually voted for us, considering the mileage of all the comics that it's only got to a certain amount of comic stores internationally compared to Image, where all of Images are all in comic stores. Like every comic store will not have Image comics, right? So
yeah,
just the fact that we got that far and got nominated and then won that particular thing was amazing. Yeah.
yeah. No, you
Yeah,
mentioned
absolutely.
like, yeah, like you have a smaller reach with that, just with the tools that you have with the publisher, and but yeah, I love eating up smaller publishers' work or what they put out for like you guys and your fellow creators. But yeah,
It's
I
kind
have
of like
a
the same reason that people like to watch college football, because it's like those people are the hungriest, right? Like they have
yeah,
the most to
Yes.
prove,
Yeah.
you
It's
know?
exciting.
Right.
mhm,
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, and like even like again, like I don't watch sports at all, so I'm really reaching with
Me
this
too.
analogy, but like it would be really cool to find somebody like in the college years and then watch them get picked up in, in the NFL, and then just to see where their career goes. And that's how I feel, I'm excited to see that with you, with our buddy Jonathan Hedrick, who we had on, like all these indie guys. I'm very excited to see what the future has for everybody. And
yeah,
I also wanted to say that our good buddy, our good pal, just Ink, said Cover the Dead with Lime is sick, and I agree.
literally.
It's yeah,
Yeah. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
where does Cover the Dead with Lime come from for you? Like, is this like something that you had written a while back, like maybe as a movie at first, and then you turned it into a comic, or is this an original comic idea?
Yeah, it's actually based on a movie script idea. I think I wrote it in, I think it was 2009 or 10. And at the time, there was just so many zombie things, like so many zombie movies. And I think the good thing about Walking Dead was, at the time, even though it kind of dwindled at the end, the good thing at the time with Walking Dead was it was kind of like, we're a TV series and we're the official zombie, story now. Forget all these other movies and whatever's going on. And there was the odd ones here and there, like Train to Busan, that was absolutely fantastic. So just when you thought like, oh, it's all been done, it's all been done, it's all been done. And then Train to Busan was like absolutely phenomenal. And then like Walking Dead just became like the name for zombie stuff. And all of a sudden, so
Mhm.
finally, it kind of put an end to just the derivative generic bullshit of just, I think people just cashing in on like, I don't have a
Mhm.
problem with anyone. I mean, I want people to be independent, make independent movies and comics and stuff like that. But just, if you're an artist, just try to bring something different. So
Yeah.
I was happy, I think, that when COVID was kind of happening, I just thought, I was thinking, it's really, claustrophobic, and we're all going through all this right now and everything. And I was thinking, I should maybe dig up that zombie story. And I was thinking, this still hasn't been done. It's all these years later, and it still hasn't been done in this way. And I
Yeah.
think that's what there's a guy, CJ, who's with But Why Though, reviews and stuff, and he mentioned that I brought something different with The Boy Who Conquered a Mountain, because it's like a Knight's Tale, but it was Asian. And then he also mentioned that with Cover the Dead with Lime, that just when you thought that the zombie things have all been done, there's this story which is completely different in a way, and it's bringing it completely different environment. And I just
Mhm.
I just love the fact of how far back it goes, that there
Yeah.
really was bubonic plague. If you look at just typical zombie movie, like straight away, immediately, Night of the Living Dead. They all look like plague victims, you know. So it makes sense to kind of have this unique story where the idea was, the concept was, what if there was an alternate reality where the bubonic plague didn't just kill people, but it actually was the beginning of a zombie outbreak, and that could, actually, extends out. And then you've got this circumstance of the time they're living in. It's already an awful time. Like people are dying at a very young age anyway.
And it's post Black Plague, right? Like, so Black Plague already had happened, and now here comes what seems to be another one. But
and just on that, like, I think it's really cool to see things like, you don't get to see zombie stories. This is the only one that I can think of that takes place not in modern times.
Yeah.
Like everything. I love, like, why would we think that we're the only people that get zombies? Like, of course, like other people would, like, if it's just an illness or what have you, like other people throughout time would have that as well. So I think that that's brilliant that you're bringing in, like, the actual, like, let's set this somewhere else,
Yeah.
Right.
And then real quick, you mentioned CJ from what? Sorry, what is it? But why though? He's somebody's articles that I read, and what I quoted earlier, that he wrote that. So
he wrote that one, right? I knew it was. I knew it was. I thought it was either him or Jeremy from another website. That's right. Yeah, I love him. He's a really nice guy too. He's a really nice guy.
On. Awesome. But yeah, so back to Cover the Dead though. But man, I like love this story. So you got Dr. Teller. It is.
Yes, Dr. Jack Teller. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't want to like spoil. I know like you got issue 4 is coming out soon, but the first 3 are out. They're all fantastic, and I don't want to spoil the story for anybody who hasn't read it. But Dr. Jack Teller essentially goes through a crisis in this plague, and kind of loses everything he has, but he's a doctor and he can help. And in a way, like, he kind of reminds me of a Batman type character.
Yes.
But then you also get, your classic zombie fighter guys that, I guess, The Walking Dead. I'm trying to think of Army. I mean, it's not. Bruce Campbell's character. Yeah.
Without
like,
the humor, but yeah.
And it's just like the way that he, like, the opening story is just fantastic. Like, I guess, that one's been out for a while, so we can talk about that one, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. You can delve into it. Yeah.
But just the plague comes a year later. He's in the plague suits, looking like a bird. And Ash. Thank you, Justin.
It's just ink. What are you doing, everybody?
Just ink 27. But just, kind of like, I love the process too throughout the series so far of just going back to like the memory of, but then in his present situation, and just, you see how jaded he is by everything that's going on, jaded by other plague doctors. But then also just when he goes to this first, I guess, client's house that you introduce us to, and she's like, my daughter's sick, we couldn't find a heartbeat, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, there's nothing we can do. And he goes in and like kills this zombie girl. And it was just such like a real like opening of just, Teller doesn't care anymore. He knows what needs to be done, and he's going to do it because he's got a chip on his shoulder, and he wants to get rid of this plague. And
right. Yeah, he's just numb. He's just numb at this point. I think the original intention was, as a doctor, was to help people, and I think he is still going from place to place. He was called in this particular place to help the sick, But now, this is the thing, because there's times that they're living in, he's not only the job of being the doctor, but he's also the executioner as well. Father Merrin, that's right, yeah. I know that Justin is now. He's saying about the exorcist. It wasn't intended at the time to be that way, but it does have like a very kind of exorcist moment about it when he's walking in, the door opens and she's standing there.
It's such a creepy panel too.
The art definitely does a fantastic job of like displaying the rot. of like
it's
like letting it know that there's like infection, like
it's
Yes,
muddy,
yes.
it's gross. Like
Yeah, this is Hernan Gonzalez does the art, Damien Fleet does the colors, and Drew Lenhart does the lettering. Uh, it's like one of those things where I've done, as you've read, all kinds of different horrors, but this one is like, man, this is going to be the goriest one I've ever done. You know, could just tell it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because you've got to go all out with this, because it's going to be. And by the time you get to issue 3, and we can touch upon that a little bit, at that time I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be really good for Halloween. At the time, it didn't come out at Halloween; it ended up coming out at Christmas because there was some hold up or whatever. But that's as grimy, and it was a grimy and disgusting time. Like I was saying, I think I said in another interview, that people would throw crap out of their window. Like, this is the reason why you got plague. This is the reason why there was so many people dying so early, because there was no sanitation, there was no proper sewage systems, and people were just chucking out their toiletry, toilet stuff. And so I wanted to show that, like, immediately. It's pissing it down. This is England. This is England. It's pissing it down with rain. It's
late
it's depressing
17th century London, England.
No, this is just last week. This is just last week.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's depressing as well. Just joking. No, and it's muddy and wet. I want, that's the thing. It's describing that, and once you describe that, and you find that in your artists that can show what you're trying to convey, which was perfect with this team, and they're all really lovely, kind, good people and giving people, because we're all very passionate about what we do and even as a team. And if you find people that aren't just as passionate as you are, but want to go that extra mile to, like, that's really, can we get a little bit more with that, make it a little bit more grimy, a little bit more this and that and everything, and don't have a problem with it, and just because we all want the same thing. And that's what I got with these guys, and that's why, again, I think that's why we got nominated and we won and everything, because we wanted to show it all kind of goes back to the filmmaking days. It goes back to, this is what we've got. We don't have loads of money. We're not on a big label, but here we are, and this is our calling card.
Yeah. No, the whole team did great. You already mentioned it was Hernan Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Is that right? And then
yes,
Damien Felipe. Yeah, and then you got Drew Lenhart doing the letters, and just such a great piece of work, all of it together. I got a question for you.
Just showing a little bit of the inside.
So like, I've always heard, and I've said quite a few times on this podcast, but like the colorist is always seen as like the soundtrack of the comic.
Like
how would you describe a letterer?
Oh, that's tricky, isn't it? Oh man, it's the finalists. It's the finalist of the whole process. Without the letter, I think underrated as well. Completely underrated, because they are really important. Because if you have bad lettering, and I'm not being mean or nothing, but I've seen some bigger publisher places, and I've seen some lettering on some stuff. And I'm thinking, that ain't acceptable for me, let alone like to be on this big, label or whatever publisher they're on. And I'm thinking, how does that? I can understand certain lettering works best with a particular type of genre or a particular type of indie comic or whatever. But I'll see some, and I'm like, why was that okay? Like, so again with Drew, again, a very giving person, and I actually, in fact, a little tidbit story of how I met Drew. The first story that was released just before Elsewhere was on a other independent little company called Snowy Works, and it was that Toadstool story, but it was in black and white at the time. And that's actually Drew's little like indie publisher company. So that was how I met Drew. And then occasionally, he'd say, "Oh, we're doing another anthology. Do you want to do it?" And I'm like, "Okay, I might be able to do something." And we'd be back and forth, and we'd be supporting each other's stuff. He'd bring out stuff I'd support. And then after a while, it got to a point of like, I'm going to be putting together like 6 or 7 pages to pitch this thing to different publishers. and I reached out to Drew at the time and just said, "Oh, would you be interested in lettering this and everything?" And then he did. And then once it got picked up, I obviously kept with the team. I didn't decide to change. Oh, I'll change this one out for someone else or whatever. That way, you've got that kind of commitment of us all together that we started something and we want to finish it together. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, the whole team did great. The art is just seriously just it's so dark, but it pops. I'm looking at I don't know which page it is, maybe page 10 of issue 1, and it's just a one panel. No, it's 2 panels, but just the way that Teller is drawn in it, and it just looks like he's standing out of the page.
Oh yeah, in the shower part, is it like a shower type thing? He's in the
no,
bath or something? Is that
he's still talking. Yeah, he's still talking with the mom in issue 1. It's before he deals with her.
Yeah.
And she's just pardon me, good sir, and it's just lightning's cracking down behind him.
Yeah.
Oh. How Stroom is written. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
How Stroom's written out there. This page is just phenomenal for me.
Yeah.
And
it's the art is very reminiscent of Mike Dedato Jr., who's I'm a really big fan of. It's just that dark, heavy shadows, but the things that you can see of the people are just very predominant, and just give that heavy. You can just I just love comics that you can just feel the heaviness of it, and I feel and not just again we're talking about the heaviness, but also the first page of issue 1 is just it's light. It's happy, and that's the artist was able to relay that as well, and then things switch, and it's
I think that was the key at the beginning. The pitch really kind of started with the pages, because we did 6 or 7 pages as a pitch originally, that starts kind of at that point where it says 1666, where the people are running through the street and it's raining, and then you hear the click 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 of the cane hitting the street, hitting the cobbled streets. That's where it originally started. And at the time, I was thinking, well, we're going to be going back and forth between 2 different time periods anyway, because both of them are just as important as each other. How he became and his becoming in 2 different times. So many, both years are just as crucial as each other. And I tried to show that in issue 3, when literally we jumped between 1665 and 1666 as he's just found out some awful information about a family member, and the 3 I don't want to ruin it, but 3 people are holding him, and then in the next panel, he's back in the present of 1666 where a bunch of zombies are holding him. And just to go between those 2 panels, it's which nightmare would you prefer to have? The one where you found out the worst possible nightmares come true and these people are about to maybe kill you as well, or the present where these people are about to tear you apart and destroy you and you've already lost everything already anyway? So which nightmare would you prefer to have? Either one is absolutely awful, kind of thing. So at the beginning, I wanted to show, it was so important to show how times were, even when they were normal, that it was just a nice, normal time, and something you could relate to, and also seeing the character as he was before everything went, everything happened to him.
So this definitely came to me while we were just sitting here, and maybe I think it's because of something you said, and take this the right way. It definitely feels like walking through a nightmare, right? You did say that, the 2 situations, but just the idea of feeling a little bit like a fever dream of just what's happening right now, just all this just tragedies happening around me. I'm internalizing this. I'm a big fan of when stories jump around like that. One of the comics I'm reading right now is Behold Behemoth, and that jumps around a lot, and just being able to and also I was a huge fan of The Godfather Part 2, where they're just jumping around and just being able to see to tell these stories here and to understand this person got here because of that. It's so much fun.
I enjoyed doing that.
Man.
All right. Anything that you wanted to say about anything else you want to add to Cover the Dead with Lime before we cap that off?
I think so what you were just talking about and everything, I think that's very important as well, to show that, and that's what you're gonna, you're finding throughout the series and everything, to how he became this way, the way that he is and everything, and also if he can find himself again as well, because
Mm,
like you say, there is a part of him that is kind of, it's almost like he's dead inside. And that's the irony of
Yeah,
it. He's surrounded in the dead. He might as well be dead himself. He's wearing this mask all the time. He's lost himself in this thing that he just puts on every single day. That's the impression we get. And as it goes on further,
yeah,
you'll see that like another issue is going to open up that way, where he's putting this mask on every time, and it's like, you know, I think that was really good with issue 3, is that it was a reminder of, at the end of that, it's like, this is the reason why I'm doing this. I'm doing
yeah,
this because of this, and it was great to show the audience that that this is the reason why he's on this path, and the reason why he's doing these things, because there is still a trace of hope, even if
hmm
it looks as dark and terrible as things are and everything, and having tiny little tangents of just moments of hope, even when it's completely dark and grimy, or also, just a moment in a nice day, all of a sudden it would just come out of the blue, and you appreciate it more because because it's so dark all the time, and just
hmm
awful times, I think. So yeah.
Yeah.
uh,
Well, audience, if you haven't picked up Cover the Dead with Lime, please do. I beg you. It's amazing. There's several different covers for each issue so far, which
Yes,
all the
yes.
covers are just brilliant. I love them. You
mhm.
can check them out, on the Googles.
I have
Um,
there's some links in the description you can check out
oh,
as
perfect.
well. I
Right
also
on.
I did want to say this about the comic. I was talking to my comic book guy, and he was telling me that there's a couple of people that have it in their weekly, like they're in their pool, so they're waiting for it to come
Yes.
out. And he said
Yeah.
at our comic book shop, he was selling a bunch of them, so it was great. Just
Oh,
wanted to pass
sweet.
that on
Oh,
and let you
wicked.
know that yeah, locally people are enjoying it.
Oh, that's great. I think that's the most important thing, and that's what resonates, I think, with us, is that, and actually getting to meet the people or just hearing about it. That's a great thing, because otherwise you're putting it out there and you don't really know if people are reading it or how far it's reaching, kind of thing. And
Right.
we hope for it to be out, um, probably a bit longer than a month, because we're basically still wrapping it up at the moment, because it's all
Okay.
self-funded and everything. But yeah, it's going to be eight issues eventually. We'll be
Okay.
wrapping it.
Right on.
So,
Nice.
Cool. Well, Jonathan,
Oh,
this is great. Thank
just
you
to
for
say,
coming on.
oh no,
Well, I
quick.
hang on. Oh,
Well,
yeah,
well,
sorry.
uh, her buddy Just Inc
Justin.
27 said definitely my pool to go along with my signed copies. That's awesome.
Nice.
I'd love to get some signed copies sometime. So I'll
Same.
have to
Oh
come
Um,
out
yeah.
to the West Coast.
but yeah, so where
Oh yeah.
where where can
No
we
problem.
find you online? What do you got coming up? Where people could see you? I know you'll be wandering
Yes.
around WonderCon, so or WonderCon. You'll be wandering around WonderCon. There we
It's
go.
just a bunch of nomads just walking around with like shaws and hobo packs.
Yeah.
The
So
funny thing is, I'll probably feel more out of place, not dressed in any particular way, but just like I'm at the wrong convention or something. I'll just be walking around looking
Right.
like, just myself kind of thing. But yeah, so I'll be at WonderCon. I'm also, so I'm on Jonathan_Chance on Instagram, Carry On John on Twitter, Carry On John without the H on TikTok, website jonathan-chance.com, and things coming out. Well, we're really hard working on this right now, because everything I do is kind of like self-funded in that. I think most of the things I'm doing is going into this right now. But prior to that, it was really doing, shorts and things like that. And then there was the Boy Conquer the Mountain, which was the graphic novel. I would love to get back to doing the series of the Boy Conquer the Mountain, one point when I, funds and things like that will be in. But definitely my main focus is completing Cover the Dead with Lime. but I might be doing another couple of shorts or so, maybe if I can or not. It depends.
We'll see.
With elsewhere, elsewhere, and like I said, I would love to also make Never by Night my horror anthology. I would love to bring a volume of that out every year, and I've already got 2 volumes complete for that. So if there's any publishers out there that's interested, I want to get it out there because it's that's also.
How can people help you out with that?
Watch this and reach out to you, me, or whoever and say, John, I like with anthology, that sounded really good, and let's publish it. And then,
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll bring it out.
Spread the word. Let's get it out there.
Come on, Scout. I'm trying to do something with Scout. I'm trying to get this podcast sponsored by Scout or something. That's my just personal little, but that's just my board project that I do, and I just harass Scout on internet until they acknowledge me. But no, just they have this thing called Black Caravan. I would love to see have something out under that. That would be dope. Anyways, however we could get that out, it sounds fantastic. You have 2 readers at least, and I'm sure as well.
That would be good enough for me.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Well, as for the Pullbox Pals, you can find us at Pullbox Pals on Instagram and pretty much any of your social media sites. And then you can find me at mad_nerdy on Instagram. You can find Monk at that Monk guy on Instagram. And there's probably link trees and stuff to get you further down the road if you want to go down those rabbit holes of who the 3 of us are. So, thank you again, Jonathan. And
thank you for having me on the show, guys. I really appreciate it. I had a really great time, guys.
Yes, same here.
Yeah. We definitely had a great time. And Jonathan, when I read your comics, I like to say I haven't read comics like these in years.
Oh, that's